I want to tell you a story, a famous story of a photograph that was taken in China in the 1930s by a Chinese photographer. Now this picture, this photograph, was taken by this man during a very difficult time in the history of China. The Japanese army had just come into China and slaughtered many Chinese. It was terrible. Many Chinese were massacred and the future was uncertain. And during that very difficult time, the church actually grew. The missionaries who were in China continued to faithfully proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. And there were many who actually turned to Christ. This photographer was not a Christian, but he sensed that something was happening spiritually. People were turning to Christ. And the more he considered this, the more disturbed he was in his heart. So what did he do? He was praying one day. He said, God, if you are there, if you are really there, can you show me your face? And I will believe. And so one day, on a very cold morning, he was riding by the countryside, and I think it was a cemetery, and some voice told him, take a picture, take a picture. So he had his camera with him, and he took a picture of the ground. He didn't see anything, but he went home and developed the picture. And when he developed the picture, he was amazed. Because in the picture, as he saw the patches of snow and the ground, he saw a face. And it was the face of Christ. Now, there are many, many accounts of this particular story, and I found this story mentioned by Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian philosopher, famous for his theory of the medium and the message. So in one of his books, The Medium and the Light, he tells this story. And it's an amazing story because this man, when he saw the picture, he believed and became a Christian. And this picture was shared among many Chinese. And they say that it was as if the Lord was reassuring His church that He's with them. And sure enough, a few years later, it was a terrible time of persecution for the Christians. Missionaries were expelled from the country. And there was great fear outside China about what would happen to the fragile church there. There were about 1 million Christians. And so more than 30 years passed, and when the doors were open again and people could get in, they found to their amazement that the church had grown 50 times by some accounts, and that there were 50 million Chinese Christians. Amazing. This is not normal arithmetic. This is not normal sociology. This is the work of the Lord. So the risen Christ showed Himself to one Chinese man who was converted, and then the news spread, and there were many Chinese Christians who were reassured that even in difficult times, the risen Christ is with us. And even in the darkest hours, the Lord Jesus Christ, the risen Christ, is with us. There's another lovely story from India this time. And Sadhu Sundar Singh is somebody that many Christians know. He, as a young boy, he was put in a mission school to study English. But he didn't like the Christians. And at the young age of 14, his mother tragically died. And he was so angry, so upset with God, that he took the Bible in school and he tore the pages one by one and burned the pages of the Bible. That was how bitter he was. That bitterness grew in him and became despair. And one night, he was so full of despair that he wanted to take away his life. He prayed to God. He said, I'm going to commit suicide by throwing myself on the train track when the early morning train comes. And if you are there, please show yourself to me, because I've really come to the end of my rope. And at that moment, he saw a bright light in his room, and he saw Jesus Christ appearing to him and smiling at him, reassuring him. And at that point, he became a believer. He told his father that he had become a Christian, and the father disowned him. For the rest of his life, he became a very passionate evangelist, preaching the gospel in so many different places. Again, isn't it marvelous that the Lord Jesus Christ is risen, and he continues to show his face in different ways to people so that their faith may be strengthened. I'll tell my own little story. In school, I was sitting for a science practical exam. So I was in the laboratory, and when I came to a question, it just baffled me. I could not figure out how to answer that question. And as the minutes ticked by, I grew in despair that I'm not going to be able to answer this question. I may possibly fail the exam. It was at that point I sensed a presence. I can still remember it vividly. I was on my lab table doing my experiments, answering the questions, and I sensed next to me on the long ledge in the laboratory somebody sitting there. And in my heart, I knew that it was Jesus Christ. I could almost sense him looking at me and smiling at me and reassuring me that I was not alone in my struggle. And when I sensed that, something amazing happened. Something in my mind clicked. And I could immediately recognize how to solve the question, how to go about doing the experiment to answer that question. And somehow joy crept into my heart, and I realized my Lord lives, and he's here to give me assurance, and he's here to help me. And that was an experience I would never forget, that the Lord Jesus Christ blessed me with his risen presence. And there are so many other times he did the same. I'm sure that you and I would value such experiences where we have evidence, not only objectively but also subjectively, in our own hearts and lives, in our own thinking and experiences, in our perceptions, that Jesus Christ is indeed risen and that he is alive in our lives and around us.